So far we've talked about legacy point 1, understand sex God's way, and legacy point 2, understand sex the world's way.
Yeah. Now we want to talk about legacy point 3, and that is that we have to pursue purity together, because a pure teen needs a pure team. It is way too big a burden for our teenagers to try to pursue purity on their own. The culture is working against them, and they need to know that they've got a family unit that is solidly behind them and walking alongside them.
That mom and dad are part of a team that's going to help them stay pure.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, so moms and dads, it's not fair just to say, you better do this, you better not do that. We've got to actually do these things with them. We've got to walk alongside them. So before we ask our kids to make any commitments, we need to be willing to make commitments as their parents. So a few commitments we as parents need to be willing to make. Number one, we need to commit to setting an example of purity. We need to show them that we're going to develop a pure culture within the home by the way that we live, by the boundaries that they see us set up to protect the purity of our own relationship. And we need to also make sure that we are inspiring them to want to be married themselves. It's a dangerous place in our culture when we have so few kids who are deciding to get married and instead choosing to live together because they're no longer inspired to the institution of marriage. We have failed as the generation of their parents that we aren't inspiring them because they're not seeing things in our relationship that are motivating them to want to have a marriage of their own.
We really do need to show examples of faithfulness and purity. And, I don't know, maybe your teens would disagree with this, but I believe that you are doing them a disservice if you don't love each other enough so that every once in a while you make them gag.
That's right, exactly.
Yes, I mean, your kids, I don't mean inappropriate stuff, but I do believe that it's important as husband and wife for you to do things so that your kids kind of know that there's still a spark between you, and that there's some things that you do just because you're husband and wife. And, my kids know that my husband really likes the way my legs look in a pair of heels. So mom buys lots of high-heeled shoes. And they also know that I love this one aftershave, and we will buy it every Father's Day.
Yes,
because
they will.
I really like the way he smells when he wears it.
She also likes floral and frou-frou shirts. Not a big fan of floral and frou-frou shirts, but I am a big fan of my wife. And so I'll wear whatever it takes to be able to pursue her. And it's important for my son to see his father pursue his mother. It's important for my daughter to see her father going headstrong after her mom. They need to see us actively pursuing one another. Otherwise, how are they supposed to buy the statement that sex is better in marriage if they don't see any chemistry or any attraction happening between their mom and dad?
That's right.
If we're going to inspire them to wait until marriage, we better show them that it's worth it. And by the way, kids, I want you to know this, that if you listen to sitcoms, if you listen to the news, if you listen to the media, you would believe that sex is better outside of marriage and nobody who's married is having sex anymore, because that's pretty much the way it's presented. Research shows just the opposite is actually true. Even though we are not being as inspiring as we ought to be, we are still, as married couples, having better, more fulfilling, and more sex than single people. So kids, don't buy that lie. But parents, you got to commit to setting an example that this is a glorious gift when we get to practice that with each other.
So we want to set an example by pursuing each other as husband and wife, but we also want to set an example by pursuing our kids. By letting them know, you know what, we're going to be helping you stay faithful and pure by spending time with you so that you know what faithfulness and purity should look like in a relationship with somebody of the opposite sex. One of the ways we've done that with our kids is we have always done dates with our kids.
Ever since they were young. We'll flip-flop back and forth. We'll have a daddy-daughter date. My daughter and I will go out. And then that same month, Debbie will take her son out. And then the next month, it'll be a boys' night out and a girls' night out. And then we'll just flip-flop back and forth. We've done that ever since they were babies.
And it may be something really simple. It may be, one of our latest mother-son dates, we went bowling. Okay, now I am definitely not the bowler of great scores. If I make above 60, it's a big deal. And actually, Trevin says that I need to have those bumpers in the alleys, to not end up in a negative score. But we had a fun time because I allowed him to laugh at me, and we laughed together. We had a great time.
They came home, and Debbie wasn't in the room. I just said, well, how was it, son, going bowling with your mom? And he goes, Dad, it was kind of pathetic, really, to be honest with you. It was really sad watching her. And he said, but it was hilarious, and we had a lot of fun. And he said, I'd like for us to do that a couple of other times. And I thought, wow, that's...
Okay, I thought of another example. Just recently, we had a German exchange student with us. And while he was here, even though it was only like 62 degrees out, we had promised him that if it got warm enough, we could go out on some jet skis that some friends had. And so in the 62-degree weather, we took him out on the jet skis, and Trevin and I were on a jet ski, and I kept saying, I know what's going to happen. I will end up in the water. No one else will end up in the water today. No one else will need anything, but I will. I ended up in the water. Yes, freezing cold. I was laughing to death.
She was on him the whole time going, don't drive too fast. Don't you turn too sharp. Don't be dumping me in the water. They get back to the dock. He has parked the jet ski. It is turned off. She's just stepping off the jet ski onto the dock.
I was afraid the jet ski was going to actually tump, and the whole thing was going to turn upside down, and we had just had some engine work, and it wasn't worth that. So I sacrificed myself instead of the jet ski.
That's what it was. My daughter and I, before she went to go off to college, we had our daddy-daughter date, and I just said, so what do you want to do for our date? And she said, you know, in the mall, there's this pottery place where you make your own pottery and you paint your own pottery. And she said, would you be willing to do something like that? And I went, absolutely. If you want to do it, I'm in. So we sat there, nobody else in the whole place. Two of us making pottery, trying to paint pottery. Mine was pretty ugly, but we made an incredible memory together.
That's right.
So just looking for ways. I want my daughter to know that her dad cherishes her. Because if she doesn't feel cherished by me and pursued by me, she'll be more vulnerable to being pursued by some other guy who tries to make her feel cherished. So I want her to know what truly being valued feels like. So when we go on our dates, part of the reason I do that is I want to set the bar high for that boy.
That's
so she gets the door open for her. She gets the chair pulled out for her. I will order for her. And we will make sure that she's treated like a woman of purity should be treated, so that she knows how to recognize it when a boy treats her the right way.
That's right. We also go to Christian concerts with our kids, the four of us together, just experiencing good, clean, pure fun. I don't know if they always enjoy the fact that I sing very loudly in the back row at Toby Mac concerts, but you know, we are having a great time as the four of us at a family event.
It was a little tough for our son because he had never seen us at a Toby Mac concert, and we pretty well like Toby Mac, and so he was going in one of our favorite songs, and I'm back there, you know, standing up. He's just like, oh, Dad, stop. I don't know what's happening to you. So, yeah, it may be embarrassing to them, but it's good for them to know that you're interested in the things that they are interested in because you're interested in them. So setting an example in the culture
parents,
of our home.
We commit to set the example.
Yeah.
But we also commit to protect our home.
Yeah.
Parents, this is really important. We've got to set some boundaries and help protect the purity of our kids by protecting our home.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that we do. First of all, we put boundaries on the media that comes into our home. We make sure we have filters. We make sure that we're all thinking, is this an appropriate or inappropriate thing for us to watch?
That's right.
The next thing we do is we make sure that we have rules to protect our kids. For example, they just know that if they're in the room, there's really not a need for the door to be shut unless they're changing clothes. I mean, there's nothing that they should be doing in the room that requires the door to be closed and locked.
And they also know that it's definitely a rule that they are not allowed to have somebody of the opposite sex in their bedroom. It's just not a good idea. Things happen that shouldn't happen when you're alone in a bedroom with someone of the opposite sex. And I know you're thinking, oh, no, it does not. We're just studying. Okay, that's how things happen. So sometimes it's better to be careful than to have to deal with a mistake.
Yeah, because before you know it, you're studying something than what you started out studying. Then the other thing is we make sure that we provide spiritual protection for our kids. One of the things I started doing years ago is I found this little leather bracelet. We were on vacation, and I got the kids' initials engraved on the leather. And I just put that on as a daily reminder for me to pray for my kids. And so every morning when I put it on, I'd pray for God to protect their hearts, the purity of their hearts, to protect their spirits, to protect their minds, to give them wisdom and discernment, to just give them physical protection. And 2 years ago, it had finally just gotten worn through, And I was pretty bummed about that. Well, for Father's Day, the kids bought me a new prayer bracelet because it was important to them, and they had their initials engraved on it. And so I don't go anywhere, and I don't get up in the morning and get dressed without putting on this prayer bracelet. Because in addition to locking the front door and the back door of my home each day to protect them from enemies in the flesh, I need to make sure that I remind myself that there is an enemy that is far more powerful than that I'm battling principalities for my kids' hearts and for the purity of their spirit. So I need daily reminders to make sure that I'm doing that.
I'm a mom that runs a lot of errands, so I keep something in my car that you can get online or you could make yourself. I just keep prayer cards in my car. This specific resource that I've had lately is Praying God's Will for My Kids. And it just gives me some scripture and some ideas of things that I should be praying for. So when I'm waiting to pick them up from something after school, or I'm dropping them off, or I'm running errands, I can just look at those cards and take the time right then and right there to pray for them.
Yeah, something else that we make sure that we commit to doing is talking with grace when it comes to any subject with our kids. Guys, if we don't have grace in our Christian homes, where are our kids going to see it? If we don't have grace in our Christian home, we don't have a Christian home. I remember the first time that we went out, my daughter and I, when she turned 13. It was our month for our date that month that she turned 13. And we go to this real nice restaurant, and we're sitting there, and I said, wow, baby, 13, you're a teenager now. And I said, how's that feel? And she goes, scary, Daddy. I said, yeah, well, you ought to see it from this side of the table if you think it's scary from over there. And I said, you know, we're both about to go into uncharted territory. I mean, you've never been a teenager before. I've never been a father of a teenager before. I'm pretty convinced of one thing. We're going to both blow it a couple of times over the next several years. And I said, can we just make a pact with each other tonight, baby? Can we just promise that we'll give each other grace when that happens? So when you make a mistake, you can say, Daddy, look, I'm sorry. I've never been a teenager before. I blew it. Can you give me grace? And can I say, baby, I'm sorry. I've never been a father of a teenage girl before. I blew it. Can you just give me grace? That was a short conversation. But the power of that conversation made the next several years so incredibly intimate for us that I can honestly look you in the eye and tell you the teenage years for me with my daughter were my favorite part of our relationship. But only grace can do that.
That's right. So I also wanted to commit to talk with grace to my kids. One of the things that we do is we just have open talks all the time about the relationships that they're in or the ones that they're thinking about getting in. And it's not a lecture, or it's not a, hey, you shouldn't do that, you don't know this that I know. It's actually just talking about both the good and the concerns. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've asked many times is, so do you think this person that you're dating brings out the best in you? It's a great question to ask, isn't it? I mean, really and truly, isn't that a great question to ask between spouses? Man, I want to bring out the best in my husband. And that should be part of a relationship, is helping bring out the best in each other.
One of the other ways we walk with grace is they're allowed to ask us any question about anything that they've heard. And we promise that we will not freak out. We promise that we will not go into a lecture. We promise that we will not judge and ask, who was it that you were hanging out with that you heard this said? We are just there to meet them with the truth, with grace. The other thing that we have committed to as parents, and we all need to commit to, is we need to commit to apologizing.
To asking for forgiveness.
Yeah. We need to ask for forgiveness for a couple of reasons, moms and dads. First of all, for the fact that we have played a part in creating the most impure culture in the history of our country. Now, I'm not saying that everybody in here has somehow actively contributed to that, but we certainly have passively allowed it to happen. And to place all the pressure on our kids to tell them that they're going to have to swim upstream against the culture we're responsible for would be wrong for us to do without a sincere apology. And when I say apologizing, Mom and Dad, I'm talking about getting down on your knees in front of your kids. I've had to do this with both of my children. And to look them in the eye and apologize for what this culture is that they're having to grow up in, and for the fact that our age group is the one that's responsible for that, with no justification, no defense, because they can identify hypocrisy in a heartbeat. They need to know that you are authentic, that your heart is truly broken over what they're going to have to take on.
I think it's important for us to ask for forgiveness, not just about the culture that we've allowed to happen, But guys, some of you need to ask for forgiveness for specific things that you have not been doing in order to help pursue purity. I mean, for some of you, to be able to put any kind of filter on your kid's computer, you'd have to start with your own. For some of you, in order for them not to be watching trash on television, you'd have to quit watching trash on television. Have you ever tried doing an experiment of watching a show and seeing just how many curse words are said before you turn it off? We did this when the kids were in junior high, and we just pretty much quit watching sitcoms. Because every single sitcom we wanted to watch, there were at least 5 curse words within 3 minutes, every single time. And so we have to notice those things. We have to ask for forgiveness. You know what? I have not done a good job of setting an example for you in this area. Some of you, you've been sexually promiscuous. You as the parents. Some of you started dating before your divorce was final. Some of you need to ask for forgiveness for specific areas where you have not been pure in your own life, and that you're willing to be that honest with your kids will help them then be honest with you.
So as parents, that's what we've got to do before we ever get to asking our kids to make a vow. When we have purity ring things with our kids, the first thing we do is we vow to them before we ask them to make a vow to us. So now that we've talked to the parents, teens, we want to talk to you about a couple of things you need to commit to. Turns out they're pretty much the same things that we've asked your parents to commit to. First of all, you need to commit to searching for examples. Your parents are going to set the examples. You need to search for good, godly, pure examples. If it's not in your parents, then you need to look for somebody else who can be a mentor of purity for you. Our son is really good at this. Trevin, would you mind coming up for just a minute?
You know, Kristen, when she was growing up, had a cousin that had a purity ring, and she actually was part of her wedding where she saw her cousin give her purity ring to her parents and say, I was able to keep this promise, and I want to tell you thank you for helping me to walk in purity so I'd be pure when I got married.
Yeah, that was the coolest thing. Kristen loved that part of their wedding. Before they even got up on the platform to exchange rings with each other, both the bride and the groom took off their purity ring, and they presented that back to their parents to say, I've lived out purity up to this point, so now I can prove to my husband and wife that we know what it takes to continue to live in purity. So Kristen was incredibly inspired by that. That was a great example for her. Trevin got to have his older sister as a great example for him. She's an incredibly committed, modest, pure young woman. And so he's been able to watch her. But he also wanted to have some examples in terms of growing up as a guy with purity. So tell him a couple of things that you guys do.
A few of my friends that go to the same church, usually once or twice a week, we just get together to do a Bible study, but we also have a kind of like a accountability partner kind of system, and we'll text our partner once or twice a week to just see how they're doing, and how, if they're being pure in God's eyes.
Yeah, and you guys you read different books. You guys look for mentors that you guys have kind of pulled out of the upper class guys or some of the men that work with the youth group. So I've been really impressed by that.
I think it's cool. Trevin started as Kristen with her boyfriend as their chaperone when you were younger, right?
Basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Had to be the chaperone. But then you ended up, right before she went off to college, you started doing what? Double dating.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, you did it twice, okay? I thought that was so cool to move from chaperone to a double date because he was seeing that whole purity thing lived out. So
one of the other things that we want you teens to commit to is to protecting your heart. If your parents are going to protect your home, you've got to make sure that you take on the responsibility to protect your heart. It's your heart, and ultimately that's your responsibility to protect. A couple of things that Trevin has done with this in terms of tangible examples. Trev, tell them about the commitment that you made at camp summer before last, I think.
A few years ago, at a youth camp we went to, I went to, we had a speaker that had challenged a few of the students to not date for a year, to actually know what God's calling is, and to actually know who God wants them to date. And so I did that, and it was a lot harder than I thought it would be, because I had been used to just seeing at their looks and not looking what was inside. And that really helped in my walk and finding the right girls.
Yeah, you really were able to focus more on the person. I was impressed watching that. I don't know if I would have been willing to have made that commitment. So it's pretty intimidating when your kids are more mature than you are. Something else that I'm always impressed with is, Trev, when you go to buy a video game or when you're going to buy a DVD for a movie, the fact that you call me and you just ask, Dad, I'm thinking about this game. I really would like it. Here's the rating on it. Here's what it's saying about it. What do you think? I can't tell you how much that makes me feel like you're allowing me to be a part of your life. And the fact that there have been some times where I've said to Trev, well, dude, I mean, you've told me what it says. Is it in line with your values? If it's not, how will you reconcile that? Ultimately, it's going to be your decision. I'm going to give you my advice. I'm going to let you make your decision on this. And I bet you 70% of the time, he makes the decision I would pray that he makes. And the other 30% of the time, he's either decided that he's getting rid of it, or he'll come to me and say, look, this is what's going on in it. What do you think? And we'll just sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, another thing that I think is really important, especially for guys at this age, is that you keep pure by staying busy. Yeah? I mean, why is that important?
Well, just like even in my room, I actually have like 4 instruments probably in front of my computer, which just kind of takes my time away from being tempted from other things, and to be able to play music, to be able to get better so I can do what God wants me to do.
That's awesome. And being part of the tennis team at school, being involved in sports. You know, we don't want our kids to be so active in extra things that they're like stressed out, but it's important, especially for teenage boys, to be busy.
Yeah.
Okay? It just helps for them to keep their mind on the things that are important.
Yeah. Thanks, dude.
Thanks.
Proud of you. So that's our son. We didn't get to bring our daughter with us. She's 20 years old. She's a junior in college in northwest Georgia. And she was hoping to be able to make it, but she had another engagement that was required by the college. But she was willing to let us Skype her in. So if you guys would be willing to let us indulge this moment, we would love to be able to introduce you to our daughter. Her name is Kristen. Guys, do we have her online?
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad.
Baby, we're on a little bit of a delay, so rather than me asking you a lot of questions, I want to ask you about just a few things that have impressed me about you, and you explain to them why it is that those things are important. The first thing is, I have always been incredibly impressed that you are modest and hip at the same time. And I rarely have ever had to raise an objection to anything that you've ever chosen to wear. Why is it, and I've never forced any of that on you. That is a conviction you've had on your own. Why is that? Why is modesty so important to you?
Well, I would say that modesty is important, obviously because the Bible says for women to be modest. But also, young women aren't typically told why that's important, so it's a lot more difficult to care about being modest when the culture around us obviously doesn't. A few things I've tried to remember is that first of all, you can still dress fashionably while being modest. It might take a little bit of extra thought, but it's definitely worth the time. And one verse that's a good explanation of modesty for me is 1 Peter 3:3-5. It says, "Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of past, who put their hope in God, used to adorn themselves." So this verse is just really encouraging to know that our inner characteristics are what should make us beautiful. It's not that we can't wear jewelry or accessories. I obviously like jewelry. But we should want what we wear on the outside to reflect who we really are on the inside. And if people focus on that, on our inner characteristics, more than they do their outer appearance, then modesty should be able to come a lot more easily.
I love the fact that nobody who knows you would think that you were, Amish, and that you were in no way a part of the pop culture. I mean, you're very much you're very much hip, but you are always incredibly modest. And the thing that always has impressed me is when you pick out clothes, first of all, the fact that you invite me to comment on the clothes that you have, that you actually will come and say, Daddy, look at this. Is there any issue with this? Just because you don't want to cause any issues for boys, that says so much not only about you, but about our relationship. And it always impresses me that you always want everything to draw attention to your face, to your eyes, because that's where your spirit is exuded. And when you told me that, I was like, wow, I never even think I would have thought of that. So I love that about you. One of the other things that we wanted to talk to you about, and that is that you and Matt, she's been dating this boy since she was sophomore to junior in high school.
Young man, okay, not boy, young man.
Yes, this young man. And you heard that, did you? And there are times where they will go a long period of time without being able to be with each other, either because she's traveling with us on a tour, or she's at one college and he's at the other. And one summer, we were going to be gone all summer, and they weren't going to see each other. And I said, wow, baby, that's going to be tough. Your first summer away from each other. How are you guys going to handle that? Would you tell them what you guys did to handle that?
Well, to be able to handle that, first of all, we knew that we were going to miss each other a lot, and that's a given with anybody. So we decided, you know what? Part of that time, we can obviously call each other and text each other and talk on the phone, but some of that time we can use to get closer to God and spend that time with Him. And a lot of times we get so wrapped up in good relationships that we forget to spend time with the one who created all of those good relationships for us to be able to enjoy. And if we don't set that time aside with God, then none of the other relationships will be completely fulfilling. And it's important to be able to take that time aside every once in a while just to really be able to focus on God. I don't know about you girls, but I'm pretty much a hopeless romantic. I found that since love comes from God, we are also in a romance with Him and might not even notice it a lot of times. So taking that time alone with God is the best thing that we can do for any relationship.
We love you, baby.
Love you too.
We'll talk to you soon.
So see, they still call you baby, even after you go off to college, even after sometimes you get married. Yes, it still continues. We're sorry. That's just...
No, I'm not.
No, okay.
I'll never forget when she told me that. Well, yeah, we're going to fast, and every time we miss each other, we're going to use our longing for each other, and we're going to replace it by reading the Word and increasing our longing for the Lord. And I was like, whose kid are you? I mean, I never would have thought of that, and if I had, I don't know if I would have been mature enough to have done it. I think that if we will really watch our kids, we'll be amazed at the decisions they make, especially if they know we're behind them when they do.
So just a couple of everyday kind of ways to protect your heart. Guys, it's kind of one of those, oh, everybody says that, but group dating is not a bad thing. If you can spend time with another person of the opposite sex with a group, it keeps you from getting in trouble sometimes. Other things, just making some wise decisions. Not being in dark places with the opposite sex. Just a good idea, another way to protect your heart and keep things from happening.
And just like your parents committed to this, you need to commit as well to talking with Grace, with your mom and dad. And knowing that they are going to say some things that may sound goofy, they may say some things that may sound difficult and may not be what you want to hear, but realize that ultimately one day they're going to have to stand in front of your Heavenly Father and give an account for the job that they did at protecting your heart. So be gracious with them, be graceful in your response to them, and even protect the purity of that relationship.
And understand that sometimes they may set some rules that you think aren't fair, but maybe they can see a little bit further down the road than you can. One of the things that we talked with our kids about, and we decided together with them, was that we weren't going to say a certain age for when they should start dating, that would depend on maturity. And it really did depend on whether or not we felt like they were ready for that kind of relationship or not. So those kind of talks, the only reason they went well is because we both gave each other some grace, and we kind of came to the middle ground sometimes.
Yeah, exactly right. So commit to all of those things, and finally then commit to asking for help, because you can't do this on your own.
That's right.
Scripture says it's not good for man or girl to be alone. God gave us the fellowship to be able to strengthen us. He gave us the fellowship of our family to be able to strengthen us. If you can't find strength in your family for whatever reason, then you look for good Christian mentors to be able to ask for help in. And together, you can actually accomplish an incredible life of purity.
That's right.
So we want you guys to discuss a few things that you've heard. Parents, I want you to talk about this.
And you're just going to do this as family units
Yeah.
for in a few minutes as we give this to you. We want you to just kind of get up and move so that maybe there's just one family unit at each table so that you don't overhear each other talking about this.
Yeah, just give you a little bit of privacy. And parents, I want you to share this. What ideas do you have now that will help you create a pure team as a family? What ideas do you have now that will help you create a pure team as a family? And then teens, what are some simple things you can do to be in a lifestyle of purity? What are some simple things you can do to be in a lifestyle of purity? Just some tangible everyday things. And then both of you, parents and teens, talk about what do you like about the things that you've heard? Have you heard any ideas? Have you gotten any ideas maybe that the Holy Spirit said to you as we were talking? What ideas have you heard that you really like that you could use as a family? So go ahead, get some distance, scatter out, and have some time to talk together.